Good, Dave's moved it, second from Maureen, and all in favor? Thank you. Public comments? Got anything for us?
No, I'll see you for next time.
All right. New business. Committee members' introductions. I think we've pretty much gone through that, eh?
I haven't met the gentleman at the end of the table.
Oh.
Hi, I'm Dennis Wilson.
Oh, geez.
Hi Dennis, my name's Raj.
Hi,
I'm the
Raj.
Chief Financial Officer for the
Oh, I'm
municipality.
sorry.
Yeah, we just haven't connected.
Well, there you go, you see? What do I know?
Dennis was.
I just figure everybody knows Raj. Sorry about that, my omission.
No problem.
Goals and objectives of the committee, so in terms of reference, have we been through this? I guess not. eh?
Yeah.
Now, these have been approved by council, eh?
No,
Well, they haven't.
no, because they don't need to be.
Well, that's right. Why do you have to tell me that?
It's the only place you have authority.
Go wild.
Go crazy, eh? She wants to tell me that too.
All the time. I think one of the things we're looking for is input from our non-council members into the terms of reference. If there's anything there that you see that should be tweaked or that's out of line or you forgot to add.
And can you remind me what the changes are between this set of terms of reference and the prior one?
Yeah, the main difference is.
Yeah, there was just some,
Yeah, the development of a market valuation process is the main difference, which was not in the terms of reference for our last committee. And I think there were other tweaks to it.
yeah, there were tweaks, there wasn't anything major for sure.
Yeah, one of the other things was regular reporting back to council. Because we found with the last committee was the rest, we had actually a couple council members who felt out of the loop. So just keeping council up to date of what's happening with this committee, both in open and in closed.
So do we need to do the recommendation that we rescind?
No, that was done at the last council meeting. This is just,
Well, that's
for-
right,
yeah,
that's
this
right,
is a
that's right,
report
that's
just for
right.
information.
Yeah.
I have one question about this. It says item G, identifying a target for funds to be raised from the sale of some of the land. Is that for this committee or is that a council target?
It's part of it, so if you read the top of 2.2, the committee will provide advice and recommendations to council. So the idea is that this committee will provide recommendations. And council's still grappling with the sale of some of our lands.
Yeah, it's a funny one, John. Like, I don't know if we,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Well,
yeah, I don't know
it's
if
just
we'd
like-
ever be in that,
Do they want to sell 2, 4, 10, 20?
yeah.
Sounds a little vague, and I thought council might have some.
Alright, that was on our last.
It was on the last one, yeah.
Well,
It
and it
was,
sort of
but
makes
I-
sense because, yeah, identifying which properties we would suggest being sold versus holding. Some
But
of the
this says-
previous
this
reports
says
did the
identify
same
a
thing.
target.
They made recommendations.
But
It's kind of odd.
you kind of need to go, in order to identify what you need to do, you need to have a sense of what you're trying to do.
Exactly. And that's
Well, maybe
step one.
maybe the target will come out when we have our first, because we haven't met with council, right?
No.
Maybe that'll happen when we meet with council.
Oh, in terms of how much.
Identifying
money-
a target.
Targets, yeah.
Well, I think as far as the last committee was concerned, the target ended up evolving into, let's see what's
Yeah, yeah.
gonna happen here.
Oh,
Yeah.
And rather than saying we're aiming for $6 million, but I mean, we're in a different circumstance right
Yeah.
now in that we have a bit of a sense of what's gonna happen in response to Area 1.
Yeah,
Lot
well,
2, and we also have the added pressure of the major where they do need some underwriting. So while I think we would have been really happy last term if we had managed to raise, you know, a couple of $1 million, there may be more pressure on us as a committee to make recommendations for a higher target.
Yeah, the goal of the last time was simply, what should we do to recover the surplus lands debt? And we
Yeah.
targeted a few things to accomplish that, but that was all that was sort of needed at the time. It's quite a bit different now.
Tom?
I guess that was one of my thoughts in reading through the material, John, was that there's been so much work done here already over the years, going back to 2007 or 8. And there's a huge amount of information of value in what's been done historically. And in the terms of reference, I don't see any talk about what's been done in the past and whether it's relevant to what we're being asked to consider today. And again, that goes back to this idea about targeting a price. There was, in the early parts of that, there was a very clear target to pay down debt.
Yes.
That was a
That
very
was the
strong
goal,
objective that was clearly defined.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be a question I would raise, is do we want to think about that within the context of these terms? The materials that have gone past.
Yeah, I wonder how they fit into the present. That's the problem.
Yeah. Or do we just want to start fresh? I mean, that's really the question, I guess.
Well, I think we have to reflect. This is part of the funding part of it, which is one sort of part of it. I mean, obviously we need some land for housing, we need land for this, we need that for our medical center and all these things.
Okay.
But what do we need for funding? And I think that's a separate piece.
Yeah.
And I don't know in all the old material whether we're gonna find anything in there that actually sort of talks to that.
Well, it does in a sense that when you look at it on a site-by-site basis, it does create some plans that give you some value derivatives. So, you know, I think that's where I see some real value in here, is that if there's agreement, that's the concept in terms of a form of development that would be acceptable on a particular piece, well then there's a value equation that you could draw from that.
Yes.
But, and having said that, it's also at the prerogative of council to decide on densities, for example, if you wanted to increase the returns. So there's variations on that theme too, but I just felt that there was a huge amount of value in some of the planning that had been done just site by site. So you can get some conceptual ideas about what was actually physically workable on the sites.
Yeah.
And then apply a value equation to those. That's a fairly straightforward exercise.
With that density on there.
Yes,
Yeah.
if you accept that that's a reasonable way to plan that density.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So build on the historical work.
Yeah, it just seems like it
Well,
just
that's
seems a shame to
starting-
throw
that's
that out. I
starting.
mean, it's a
Yeah.
great starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was a lot of good work.
yeah, they're different.
There's a lot of input there, yeah.
Yeah.
So just back to that G then, identifying a target. I mean, I agree with what Maureen said, there's lots of ways we could use money, but we kind of don't have any idea what the opportunities are. And it's sort of the two go together.
Yeah.
Like, give us $5 million, yeah, we can
Sure.
find ways to invest that in the community quite nicely. If it's
Yeah,
two,
but
it's a different thing.
But you gotta balance, there's so many other things to consider.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like, oh, we could get 10, so let's take it. But that's the
No.
future use that you're stealing now. And do you need that money? So if you don't need it now, leave it alone until you do need that land for that money. So you really only wanna target what your needs are now. Unless your intent is just to sell all the lands.
Well, but a more practical way, I think, to look at that, John, is that we all know, and you know this as well as anybody, the absorption rate on Bowen Island is a pretty finite
Right.
factor to work with in
Pretty slow.
terms of how all of this land will go out into the marketplace.
Yeah.
So I think those are predetermining factors in terms of what a level of return you can expect to get off of whatever the concept is that we land on.
The other issue is whether it's selling the lands or leasing the lands.
Right.
And that's a discussion that hasn't come to a landing
Right.
at this point.
And I think obviously, one of the first steps in this is an evaluation of the land.
Yeah.
absolutely. I would think that's one of the first things we have to do.
And just on that point, I mean, that's where I know I'm being asked to be on this committee for advisement in that area, because that
Yes.
is my area of expertise. But I think also, you know, I think there has to be, the terms of reference around that have to be clear as well. So for
Yeah.
example, one of the things I've obviously thought about is the location of the fire hall on 3. Well, what's the value component there of that particular piece? You know, and I think in terms of the terms of reference, I think it's gonna, we have to direct the appraiser to consider what it is we're looking for in terms of information on a site-by-site basis. So for example, on lot 3, are we just looking for the market value based on its current zoning or what the expected zoning is gonna be
Yeah.
in a development form? Or do we want more than that? Do we want to actually see some parcelization? And if the property were developed in this way, what would the values be coming out of that? I think those are things that we should discuss.
Well, I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, I guess there's several ways to look at it. And Erwin Torrey there, Don's buddy, do you know Erwin by any chance?
No.
Yeah. Anyway, his whole idea was we parcel everything in 1 or 2 acre parcels.
Right.
And then evaluate them all.
Yeah.
So that when the time came to either put a civic facility somewhere or do this, or make some money, or put some low-cost housing in, or rental housing, or an apartment block for workers, whatever it is, you could just go and you could say, well, you know, this piece over here hasn't got a lot of sunlight and stuff like that, and we could pull that one out and just put an RFP in it. I think we want to get to a position where we're not coming to council for decisions like this.
Right.
Because I think there has to be some guidance to council from people that know what's actually involved.
Okay, that's great. That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
I was looking for advice.
I think though we have to assume highest and best use on all these properties as we value them, as opposed to arbitrarily saying, so that the factors that vary are accessibility and developability and sunlight and a variety of things that may shape of parcels that would affect the value, as opposed to saying, okay, well here we'll do duplexes, and here we'll do apartments, and here we'll do something else. Well, I think what we need to do is get a base of land value based on accessibility and all these other factors before we start valuing for how much density and what kind of use.
I
It's a
don't
little
think,
bit backwards from what
I don't think you can
happened.
separate them though, Dennis. I really don't. You can do, you know, unless the appraiser is clear on what the highest and best use considerations are, and generally it's zoning for sure.
Yeah,
You have to, if the zoning isn't in place, like if you're asking the appraiser to do a highest and best use analysis based on current zoning, that's gonna be quite different than what we're talking about as a potential end use. So there will be some assumptions that we'll have to put in front of the appraiser to say, we'd like you to consider it under this particular zoning that would permit this, you know, this set of circumstances about how that land can be used. Otherwise, we're not gonna get the right numbers to work with here.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a preliminary step, though, does it not make sense to just ask the appraiser to work with what is the current zoning for those lots?
That's something we definitely want,
Right, so.
but I think we want more than that as
Oh,
well.
I think we
Yeah.
do want more than that, but just as a starting
Oh,
point.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
I
agree
mean,
with that.
zoning is changeable.
Yeah, right.
Of course.
I mean,
yeah.
that's the issue. We're playing with something could be anything.
yeah, I'm sure.
And that's why I was trying to say, if we sort of looked at all the properties in terms of what their holding capacity, you know, maybe it's multifamily, single family, you know, maybe some different
Yeah.
land uses which we can maximize on those parcels, then.
But where the appraiser will have trouble is looking at any of the parcels that have a civic zoning on them, for example.
Yeah,
Those are not something you can go to the marketplace to find examples for.
no.
So you've got to make assumptions about an alternate use in order to come up to a value, and that's really what I was getting at.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely correct, but I also think that, some of these things will be civic use and we won't get the highest and best out of them. We understand that. But I think we have to have just somewhere to start with that we can sort of hang our hat on and just, I don't think it's gonna be perfect, like you say, Tom, because the zoning is gonna be different on every piece of property.
Yeah.
But just something that we can work with.
Yeah.
Even if they're just in relative values.
Well, I'll use another example. What's often done in the cases where you have a property that's got a civic zoning on it, and it's in amongst another type of zoning,
Yeah.
then, you know, the assumption that an appraiser would make would be that instead of the civil type of exclusive use, the assumption would be made that that particular piece would take on the zoning of the surrounding land and be used in a
Yeah.
like-minded way.
Yes.
So you
Yeah.
know, it's not
That's an assumption,
a
yeah.
big reach,
Yeah.
but it's something that makes sense in the face of something alternative to that
Yeah.
civic use. So I'll just use that as an example.
That's a really good example. And,
May I just say something?
yeah, sure, Marie.
And this is gonna sound incredibly naive, but whenever I hear highest and best use, I get really twitchy. Because what we're talking about is not necessarily the highest and best economic use of that land. I think it's in the terms of reference, if it's not, no, it's in the island plan, that what matters is the highest and best community use of those lands, because they are community lands. And part of what we are charged with as a committee is not looking solely at monetizing the community lands. It actually has to be looked at from the perspective of there are uses that these lands could be put to that aren't going to bring in money, but they're going to bring in all sorts of
Yeah,
other
yeah.
benefits.
Value,
to the community.
for high
That's
value.
That's being,
Maureen, I
Yeah,
totally
developed
agree
on
with
that
that, but that
level.
won't have a bearing on the appraisal.
sorry,
That won't have a bearing on the appraisal. Highest and best use is a specific appraisal
economic
term.
term.
Yep,
Yeah.
it has a very clear definition in terms of what it means.
Yeah, I looked it up, but I also thought that's the definition within an economic framework, and that is not the framework I bring to this discussion.
No.
No, not at all.
We're
Not at all.
suggesting
So
that.
doing
We
a
have that
basic
flexibility.
appraisal to get a benchmark,
Yeah.
and
The
then use
benchmark is
that
what
to
we're
build
looking for.
upon, is that what you're saying?
Highest and best use is fundamental to any appraisal.
Yeah.
It is the thing that guides the appraiser in the direction they go to determine value. So
Yeah.
it's an absolute fundamental to the process.
So that we work with that,
Yeah,
To inform our
recognizing the
discussion.
community
Yeah.
uses that we're.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Is there the possibility that
Excuse me.
because we're talking about a holistic perspective on the community lands, or has anybody done the work? You were on, I think you were on the previous, I'm interested from an infrastructure perspective, the carrying capacity of the sewer and water systems to take, is there capacity, I guess it's one of the reasons I wrote that email,
Mhm.
is there capacity within the system to take the zoning that's already in place, which has been worked on for several years? Do we know?
I talked to Bob about that the other day, and he doesn't seem to think there was any problem, because I alluded to something else, and we were just throwing the numbers around, and he's taken everything into consideration.
That's in the current zoning?
Yes.
So I've asked him for something definitive in writing, and he's been away, so I think
Yeah.
he'll provide that, we
Okay.
just didn't have it.
No, I'm
for
just
this week
curious,
yet.
because
Yeah.
if, say, for example, the current zoning put a strain on the water or the sewer, or
Yeah.
I don't think it would be power, but if the water and sewer didn't have the capacity to take the current zoning, that might trigger, if we're talking about increasing the zone, the densities,
Yeah.
well, okay, you can't do that without doing something to the
Yes.
And that would
sewer,
impact any
sewer
appraisals
and
as
water,
well.
right?
Well,
And I know we're upgrading the water, but
But that's a really valid point within the appraisal process, because the appraiser needs to understand that information too, Don. Because that has a direct bearing on highest and best use.
Yeah.
okay.
Well, like on lot one, I mean, parts of lot one, you'd have to bring the water in from a fair distance. I think it's at IPS. Just thinking of that little piece of property up at the top there. So the water's at IPS, so it can't be that far away.
Yeah, I don't think all.
Septic would have to be done in fields.
Okay,
Well,
if you're doing septic.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be hooking it up to me.
When would Bob have that? Do you know?
I talked to him late last week about it, whenever Dawn had set up its email, probably we'd have it out next week. He might already have something in writing, he's just been up north, so. We'll remind him.
So, is everybody okay with those terms of reference? They're relatively, they're not too tight. I think we can make it work for the time being. So timeline for reporting back to council. Anybody want to jump in on that one? Now, obviously, we have the 30-day, which is probably 2 weeks into the 30 days already. And, you know, this is to respond to the health clinic and Birch out there.
Well, it seems like we need to lay out a schedule, because I think we need to get the appraisals, and we need to, I think, meet with the different groups.
Yep.
And sort of work with them on alternatives or whatever, get everybody happy as part of the process. So there's a logical progression in all this, getting the work done, the analysis, then coming up with alternatives, and then meeting with the different groups.
Yep.
And that by itself will take a certain amount of time, which is probably more than the 30 days.
What are you going to do?
I'm going away the 9th. The 9th. I'm gone from the 9th to the 30th.
March 9th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Spring break.
Why don't we get this terms of reference covered and move on, like, before we get into who's going where?
So are you thinking, John, that I was wondering, should we take the word target out? I mean, it's up to council.
I don't think we have to do anything with the terms of reference. I think they're fine.
Yeah.
Do we need to pass a motion?
No, I think
No.
we're fine. They're already there.
Okay.
I think what
If
we're
anybody-
talking about now is the 30 days reporting back to council.
Well, John seemed to have a concern about,
I think he fell asleep for a minute.
No, just, like, let's get through this part and get into the real discussion of everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm the guilty party for
Yes.
the 30 days.
Yep.
And the initial recommendation was for 90 days. And I looked at that and I thought, if we have a recommendation that says report back in 90 days, we'll be reporting back in 180 days or 360 days.
Okay.
So I pushed it and it was passed.
you had your reasons, yeah, I know we had
I had my
to
reasons.
understand, yeah.
Dawn and I talked about it. What's interesting about the resolution is if you take a look at it, it doesn't actually say what we're reporting back on. At
True.
the end of a 30-day period, we could be reporting back on the progress on getting an appraisal.
That's because the whereases weren't included. The
That's
whereases.
exactly
yeah.
why,
Yeah.
yeah, which is why I removed them. So the purpose of this was to light a fire under this committee. We would have been meeting in April if that resolution wasn't there. We wouldn't be sitting here at 8:20 in the evening
Yeah.
after 4 hours of Islands Trust meetings.
You know what? You're absolutely right.
No,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
So, I agree, but I would like to see something that we can take to those guys in 30 days, and I don't know what it's gonna be, but just, we want to bring them in at a certain point in time, and it's gonna be a negotiation, but we have to be up to speed to know what we're offering and, you know, where we're coming from, so we can listen to them and see if we can work something out in there.
I'm prepared to speak to some aspects of what you just said in the closed meeting though,
Yes. Yeah.
and report.
Yeah.
I did have a fire lit under me, so
Yeah,
good
good.
to report on that.
Hers are good. I don't know if we're gonna get much from this. Timeline for reporting back, so how do you wanna deal with that? I mean, that was the resolution that came up, and I think, you know, we'll do the best we can.
Well, we would do. report-
And we know that
We
we-
will report our status in 30 days,
Yeah, yeah.
and where we're going from there,
Yeah.
what we've done and where we're headed.
Well, I would be up for reporting in a week or two, like, I mean, I'm comfortable with that.
Well, you might be.
Well,
I don't
I
have a
mean, one
problem
of
with
the
it, but it should be something meaningful, like.
well, yeah, that's why I brought my sunglasses.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
I mean, Allison had a concern about, you know, wanting, you know, all of council to be involved. I'd like to respect that request, and maybe we can meet with council, I don't know, bi-weekly or every third week, or, I mean, council typically meets twice a month, right?
Second and fourth Mondays.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I
maybe
would
every
say
se-
once a month would be plenty enough.
Yeah,
That would be about 100 times more than the last one.
well, and, yeah, I just think that'll help the end result, if there's a consensus in the room that
Yeah.
we're, you know, they're feeling that they're part of it,
Yeah.
which we want them to be, I think, everybody here.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
And also-
even if we just report on, like, I've got a lot to report, but it's in the closed agenda, so
Yeah,
at least I feel it is, I don't know.
yeah,
I've written a couple
I'll
of
let you know
emails.
if it's not.
Yeah, thanks.
yeah.
There's definitely
No,
no
there's-
value in dropping a bomb and saying, here
Yeah.
it is.
We've done that before and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So what if we aimed to report on March the 25th? It's not quite 30 days, but we can report on our first
Yeah,
30
we were
days.
talking about availability, so,
Yeah.
yeah, so I can do that, but then I'm gone for a week myself, and you're still away. Tom, you might be back,
Just back.
so
Oh,
Tom
really?
and,
You'll be back?
yeah,
I'm back, I'll be back on the 20th.
yeah,
Oh,
so,
okay.
so that's it, that's a completely, this is old school, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I put all these green blobs where we did have opportunities to meet, but he's away for the month, he's going to Maui tomorrow for 2 weeks, so, yeah, the 25th, I think would be, we would have something to report, for sure.
Yeah.
The committee can continue to correspond by email, and we also
Well, Dennis
have-
and I will be here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
But as well, we can have electronic
I can-
participation at meetings.
Yeah, I can Skype or whatever.
Well, you're on holiday, so, right?
I don't know, yeah. Depending on whether you want to.
You
do
could
that.
scoot over to Kauai and Skype with,
That would be cruel.
Maybe you guys could,
That would be cruel.
yeah. Yeah, so that, I think that gives us a, you know, and it's certainly within the 30 days, I think, Maureen, right?
Yeah,
No? It's outside the 30 days even?
yeah,
Just
it's,
slightly.
it's close.
Okay, close.
Close enough.
Okay.
We can only do what we can do.
Yeah,
We'll
so,
try as hard as we can, and that's, you know, it's
Oh,
just the
okay.
reality of things. But let's try.
So when's the
let's
one
go for
before the
25th then.
is there one on the 11th?
There,
Council?
there
I don't
is,
think, I think
but
the 25th
we're
is fine.
currently preparing the agenda for that, that'll go out.
Oh, yeah, you need a,
Yeah.
yeah, so put us down for the 25th.
Yeah.
Okay,
What day of the week is that?
Monday.
always.
And what time of the?
We have evening
Oh,
meetings,
yeah,
yeah.
evening,
Yeah,
yeah.
likely if the committee will want to meet with council, we'll probably do it prior to the regular meeting, so prior to 6:15, maybe a 5 o'clock start.
You okay?
We
Yeah,
can-
no, I'm
we
fine,
can
evenings
touch
are fine,
base.
it's just like, you know, I'm
25th.
I'm in the office 4 days a week.
Party.
Yeah, but
Yes.
could you make 5? Like if it's at 5?
So we do
What
have
did you say?
our solicitor coming over for a special meeting with council at probably 4 PM on the 25th. But we can talk to Hope and we can figure out a time that works for everybody.
It's just that we were all clear on Fridays, but I think that's the day you're not here.
Yeah, but I mean,
So Tom would be in
Can't
town.
rush.
Well, the trouble is, for me to get across, that means I have to catch like a 3:30 ferry in order to get over here. And, you know, that really cuts into my day,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so.
Could we meet at 5:30? Like, we won't be saying a lot, I don't think.
Yeah,
This is with council?
yeah, it's just that we do have our lawyer coming over for that particular meeting,
At 4?
so.
Oh,
Yeah, so he's going to probably be with council for about an hour and a half or so.
so it's
So
5.
normally it would be okay to do it just before, but we could maybe schedule it for after our regular council meeting, make sure it doesn't end too late. But why don't we can talk about that offline,
Yeah,
work out a
sure.
time that works
Yeah.
well for everybody.
Okay, okay. But tentatively the evening of the
25th,
25th,
yeah.
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 Okay.
Okay, request for information from the planning staff. Dawn,
Mhm.
That was yours.
Yeah, again, Daniel hasn't had a chance to pull anything together.
Yeah.
He, the binders that were provided do provide that information. I can get him to work on it, but it'll probably be with what's on his workload another week before he
Yeah.
can pull it all.
I was just looking for a one-pager.
I know.
Not a- not
I
a
know.
lot.
They're pulled in a bunch of different directions.
Does the binder reflect the recent changes to lot one? It wouldn't?
No, this was 2016, this binder was
Right.
prepared.
Yeah.
So
That's why I
it's-
was thinking, to get an updated
Yeah.
one-pager that's got all that data.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Daniel can do it, because we actually divided that lot one into certain sections, and they're zoned and
Mm-hmm.
the whole works, and we can take a look at those and see
Yeah.
if they're realistic.
That, yeah.
Throw them
Steph,
out
if you
there.
just don't mind adding a note to the minutes, that I'll follow up with staff to get the necessary one-page report.
Excuse me. And then the request for information from Public Works, and that's from Bob. And that'll have to wait till he gets back, I guess.
He's back, or he should be back tomorrow.
Anything anybody else wants to talk about before we move to this close?
Actually, there is.
Okay.
It's just under the information items. I asked that the communicating with the public policy
Oh, yeah.
be included in this agenda package, in part because this whole area is sensitive. And the communicating with the public policy makes it clear that the mayor is the spokesperson
Yeah.
for council. And I think by extension would be the spokesperson for this committee.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess this is just a caution that reporting out comes from you, Gary.
Yeah, okay. I guess the other thing is part of the public participation, as part of that bylaw or the policy, I mean, is we have to go to public hearing. Is that the idea? Or not? Is there nothing in there?
It's,
Oh, okay.
no, it's got nothing to do with the public hearing.
Okay, well, it's all right. Super.
If I may just build on that, the other item that you had asked provided is the difference between the open and closed meetings. What we
Yeah.
have found with the previous version of this committee, and I would also point to the TAB committee that we had a few years ago, is the importance of holding as much as we can in open meetings. Otherwise, there's a feeling of, not only from council, but from community members, the lack of inclusion. So just be cognizant of that, and the more we can hold in open meetings, I think the more support we have from council and community. But having said that, what's on the closed agenda needs to be on the closed agenda.
Okay.
So on this appraisal, just before we leave the open meeting here, on this appraisal, do we want to be asking council for money for an appraisal? Are we at that point, or?
Well, I think it's probably something we should talk about in the closed meeting.
Well, when we
yeah.
start talking numbers, I just
Yeah.
wondered if it was.
Yeah, we do need council approval to assign any budget.
Yeah.
So if we move ahead with an appraiser, we will, our policy is, I think we need 3 bids. Council can waive that if they like,
Yeah.
if they find somebody that will provide the service and fairly quickly. But again, that's, we have to make a recommendation to council
Yes.
in order to access any funding.
But it's the same old thing, we probably won't do it on Wednesday the 11th, so now we're into the 25th to get that.
We can bring forward a recommendation to council for the 11th if we deal with it tonight.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
good,
for sure.
all right. So the next one is move to the closed meeting, so we'll close this one out and move to the pink sheet.
Thank you.
See you later, Don, thanks.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks, Don.